All right, so something about not just this chapter, but every single chapter. I will not be solving question one from the book. Question one is simple truth or false statements. So what you guys have to do is, so you have A to K. So that's 11 statements right there. What you guys have to do is read the statement, figure out if it's true, false, or uncertain, and then explain briefly why. Why do you think it's true, false, or uncertain? Uh, so I'm not going to be solving this, but I want every single of you to go through question one of every single chapter, because this is what's going to help you understand the concepts better. So after you've seen this video, uh, first thing you should do is go and read the chapter, the entire chapter on your own. So that's another announcement, is that uh, I will not cover everything from the book. Okay, chapters are pretty big. I'm not going to be covering everything. And if something has not been covered by me in the videos, that is not part of the syllabus. So I will not be setting questions during the quiz, midterm, or final from those sections of the chapters. So no worries about that. However, to properly understand everything, you will still have to read those chapters. You will not be quizzed on them. But if you do not read them, you may not understand everything. That is why, after looking at the videos of a specific chapter, for the rest of this course, what you guys should go do is go to the book and read the entire chapter, all of it. First step. Second step, once you've done that, so there is this small summary at the end of each chapter. Read the summary. That will help you clear out some of the concepts. But most importantly, come to the questions and problems section. Come to question one and go through all the statements and make sure you understand what you're talking about. Okay? Feel free to talk to your friends, have discussions. Of course, always feel free to come talk to me if you want to, if you think it will help you. But please do read the entire chapter, and then please do go through question one. Okay. So right now I'm going to be solving three problems. I'll be solving 2, 3, and 7. Okay. So let's start off with 2. So the question is, an investor is buying a 3-year bond with an expectation of constant interest rate during bond's life. Okay. According to our calculation, the bond price is now 100. Okay, let's write that down. So price of the bond is 100 and interest rate is 5%. Okay, that's all that's given. Part A. What happens to bond price if following some economic shock, interest rate declines? Okay, so what has happened is that interest rate has gone down to 3%. Okay. So it was 5%, now it's 3%. And the question is, what happens to the bond price? Okay. You guys should remember this from 207. What happens to bond price when interest rate falls? And the answer is simple, is that price will be higher. New price should go up, so more than 100. Why? I'm not giving you the answer because this is 207 material. Okay, you guys should know this already. If you do not know why a fall in interest rate increases bond price, go back to 207, figure it out. Part B. What happens if, okay, so what happened was that year 1, year 2, year 3. Now, expectation was that interest rate will be 5% in all of them. Then something happened, and after the first year, interest rate went down to 3%. And we said that because of this, price will go up. But now, part B is telling us that after year 2, interest rate will rebound and go back up to 5%. What will happen to price now? And the answer is still the same. New price will still be above 100. Okay, so if I call this, suppose P1, in this scenario P2, and in this scenario P3. So what we have already established is that P2 is going to be more than P1 because interest rate went down. But now we come to this scenario where interest rate goes down, but then it goes up again. P3 will still be higher than 100. Okay, this is what we will get. P2 more than P3 more than P1. Because even in the third scenario, you see in the initial scenario, every year we were going to get 5%, 5%, 5%. But in P3, even though interest rate is rebounding back to 5%, there is still 1 year where interest rate is less than 5%. As a result, P3 will remain higher than P1, but not as high as P2, because in scenario 2, interest is not rebounding, it's remaining below 3%. So once again, this is Eco 207 material. So if you do not understand what I am talking about, revise, which means chapter, what was it? I think chapter 4 of this book from Eco 207. And that should clarify whatever confusion you guys may have. Question 3. Okay. All right, so this is an interesting example. So in 1626, what happened is that a large chunk of land, which is the entire Manhattan Island, was bought from the Native Americans, from the European settlers, for something equivalent to $1.16. Okay. So the question is, I mean, there's a lot of information in question 3. Effectively, the question is, in 1626, $1.16 was paid, assuming an interest rate of 8% every year annually. How much would this $1.16 be worth today? Okay, so by today, the question means 2016. So from 2016, 1626, that's 390 years. So what we are going to do is we're going to take this $1.16 and it's going to compound at an interest rate of 8% for 390 years. And we're going to, I mean, you guys can do your calculation, figure this out. It's just a simple calculation. Part A isn't interesting. Part B is the interesting part. And part B says, do you reckon the value computed is a good approximation of the actual value of Manhattan today? And that is a resounding no. Why no? Why we're saying no is that, remember, I've already said that if we are looking at assets that's going to pay us for 10 years, for 20 years, for 30 years, that already makes our assumptions, our expectations if not wrong, then not very accurate, let's say. We can't possibly predict what's going to happen 10, 20, 30 years from today. But here, what we're trying to do is trying to assume that for this whole 390 years, there was a very constant interest rate of 8%. I mean, of course, this is a very silly assumption to make, right? So effectively, that's question B, that whatever value we get from part A is not going to be accurate simply because our assumption is not realistic. So answer to part B is no. Okay, let's move on to, I'm going to solve number 7. And 7 is interesting. It's a bit of maths involved. Okay, so in question 7, what we see is that we have an option of either buying a bond or buying a stock. Okay, the bond will pay us $60 after 3 years, and the stock will pay us $20 after every year, and we're going to hold this for 3 years. Okay, so these are the two options that we have. We can either buy a bond that will pay us 60 after 3 years, or we can hold a stock for 3 years that will pay us $20 after each year. As far as interest is concerned, interest is the same, 5% for this, let's call this IR, and 5% for this. But now we're going to talk about something we haven't talked about, that is risk. So let's just write this down first. The risk premium for this is 5%, and the risk premium for this is 10%. Okay, now this is interesting. Different assets will have different risk. I mean, if you guys live in Bangladesh, you have already seen that how a lot of investments don't really pan out, right? Look at what happened with Destiny, for example. So different investments have different levels of risks. And so what this question is telling us is that the bond will have a risk premium of 5%, and the stock will have a risk premium of 10%. So effectively, the stock is riskier than the bond. Okay. So question part A, we have to calculate the present value of this. Okay, let's start with the bond. Present value of the bond. So present value of the bond in dollar terms. What will it give us? We have $60. For the first year, we already know what the interest rate is, right? It's 5%, so 1.5. But we do not know what will happen to the interest rate for year 2 and year 3. So what we will do in this case is interest rate we have assumed will be 5%, and there is also a risk, interest risk of 5%. So 5 plus 5, 10. So for year 2, for year 3. And that gives us 47.23. This is for the bond. Let's calculate the present value of the stock for 3 years. What does that give us? For the first year, it pays us 20, and we know that the interest is 5%. Plus, at the end of second year, it pays us 20, but now we have assumed interest rate will be 5%. But there is also a risk of 10%. So 1.15. and this is going to be uh, hold on, no, I think I need my calculator. Just give me a minute. So an important thing to notice, if we read the question, what we see is that from the last line here, the real interest rate on the stock and the bond is the same. Okay, that's fine, 5%. In addition, the risk premium on stock is constant at 10%, constant. And on the bond, the risk premium is 5%. So what we are going to be doing here is pretty straight forward. This will be square plus 20. This is for 3 years, so 1.15 cube. And then do your calculation, whatever you get, and see which is more. Whichever gives you the more present value is the asset that you should be buying. Now this is similar to the problem we've already seen during the previous videos. Let's take a look at part B. Okay. Imagine the risk premia on stock and bond were equalized at 5%. Okay, so risk is 5% on both bond and stock now. How would that affect the choice made in part A? Okay, that's straightforward. For the bond, it's pretty straightforward. What we get, we have 60 divided by, I mean, we had the same interest. Nothing is going to change for the bond, right? So first year 1.05 divided by, for the remaining 2 years, this is what we get. But for the stock, the present value, what we are going to get is 20 divided by 1.0, what am I? This is 1.05 plus 20 divided by, over here we had 1.15, right? Because we had 10% risk, but now we have 5% risk. So 1.1 square plus 20 divided by 1.1 cube. And you guys can do the calculation. My calculator, I think it ran out of battery, but maybe, I don't know, it's too old. But you guys do the calculation, and same thing. Present value of bond, present value of stock. Whichever present value is higher is the asset which you should be buying. And now part C. Risk premia is back to the initial level. So how much was it? For bond it was 5%, for stock it was 10%. We're back there. And interest rate is going to change every year. So that is going to be 5% in year 1, 8% in year 2, 12% in year 3. And now how should our valuation change? Okay, this is interesting. So for the bond, once again, what will the present value be? We are getting 60. Okay. For the first year, 5% discounting. For the second year, we have 8%, but also a 5% risk premium, so 13%. Plus, for the third year, 12%, but also a 5% risk premium, so 17%. And then you see how much you get. And for the stock, once again, present value, 20 divided by, how much did we have? First year was this, 5%. For the second year, what will we do? Same thing, right? So we have 8%, but there is a 10% risk premium, so that will be 18%. And for the third year, once again, what do we have? We have 12%, but a 10% risk premium, so that will be 22%. I'm not doing these calculations because I want you guys to practice. I'm sure you guys can do this basic arithmetic problem solvings, and the answer will be the same. PV of bond, PV of stock. If bond PV is higher, you should buy the bond. If stock PV is higher, you should buy the stock. Okay, and that is it from this chapter. So it may look like a lot of things, but at the end of the day, we've done just one thing, that is expected present discounted value, or in short, PV. This is the one thing we have done from this chapter. So we're starting slowly. First chapter, relatively easy. Next chapter will also be easy, which is about consumption and investment. And I'll see you guys next week when I release the videos of chapter 15. Until then, as I've said, read the entire chapter, solve problem 1, and then, I mean, there are a lot of problems here. You start with problem 1. How many problems do we have? We have 10 problems. If you guys want to, try to solve all of them. If not, at least go through the questions and at least try to solve 2 or 3 of them. Okay? Good luck with that.